Today, I have the honor of speaking with Melissa Mari, who's a musician, a performing artist, an alchemist, amongst many other things. So welcome, Melissa.
Thank you, Stephanie, for having me. And I feel akin to you with the overall healing and health of the body, mind, through these crises, these medical crises. So I hope that perhaps I can share my own personal experience of going through this and being a spiritual person, how I've been on the process of this healing ongoing for quite some time now. Around, I would think it's about 25 years now, I was diagnosed with cervical cancer. And my father, one of the reasons, well, I left home at quite a young age, around 15, because of a mentally ill mother and my parents breaking up. And then my father died of colon cancer at the age of 54. And so when I was diagnosed with cervical cancer when I was around 30, I had already naturally been on somewhat of a spiritual path because I had all this trauma from my upbringing and leaving home at such a young age. I had a lot of drama. So I was already on the path. And at the time that I was diagnosed with cervical cancer, I had been reading this book called The Mind of the Cell. I recommend it. It's by the mother who was the partner of Aurobindo, who was an Indian mystic. And when I was diagnosed, I had the epiphany. First of all, the nurse gave me this fear, her own fear. It was like she didn't even want to tell me that I had, because I had a pap smear, and then it was like cancer, right? And so first that fear, and then I went home and I started to contemplate this because I watched my father die really quick. He was diagnosed and was dead within a year. And so I said, okay, so cancer is about your cells. I'm reading about the mind of the cells, that we are molecules, cells. We're made up of atoms. We're a holon of the whole universe. And so I am responsible for every cell and having a proper relationship with every cell of my body. So number one, I just said, I'm responsible for this. There's nothing out there. I'm the one who is responsible for healing this. And so from that moment on, it was gnosis, and it took me on the journey that I've been on ever since. You know very well that when you're diagnosed with a health issue that basically is saying you might die, you might die tomorrow or next week, that you have a choice of what direction that you want to go in. Do you go towards life or you go towards death, right? So when you choose life, then you have to ask yourself, what is my life? Who am I? What am I about? And what's blocking me? And so it's been, I thought, so getting back to the cancer and the healing. So first of all, I just went, this is even before the internet and everything. And I just went to libraries. I started looking at medical books, trying to understand what cancer was. Then I started doing all these different alternative therapies on myself. And within a year, I turned the cancer around. And it was gone, and I had another pap smear and it was gone. I didn't do a Western approach. They wanted to do all sorts of stuff, and I didn't want to do that. So I showed myself that at that point, what I had been told about cancer was not necessarily true. And so, but that was just stage one, because even though I had done this natural healing on myself, I still had all this trauma that I had still not been dealing with. And so by the time, and this would manifest in my life. This manifested in my life in relationships. It manifested in my life with my music and my art, and not having what I would see as a successful music life. Things would always come into my life and crush me. And, or was it just getting involved with people who had the same kind of psychic garbage or this trauma? And so I would manifest this in other people in my life, right? So by the time that I met Colin, which was about 10 years ago, or actually we had known each other for some time, we were friends. He was a recording mastering engineer, and we used to have, he mastered my music. And then we would have these long conversations. And so there was something very deep going on. And then we decided to start taking walks together. And all this deeper information started to come up in both of us with regards to why is it that we are where we are in our lives, and what is keeping us from what we, or the Jungians call the big S self, our destiny. And why is it that we are not able to fully manifest ourselves in the world and in our relationships? And that took us into this whole shadow integration that we've been on ever since. It was truly an alchemical experience, but it has been extremely challenging, and the work never stops. And it's like peeling layers of an onion. The moment that I think that I've gotten to the deep root, something else will occur internally and force me to go much deeper. And I'm still on that journey. And it's been incredible, challenging, painful, but incredibly meaningful. And I use that in my performance, in my music writing, in my day-to-day life. Just a deeper connection and understanding of, I guess you or someone else would say God or the goddess, or something much greater, the mysterious.
Melissa, thank you. You're a prolifically deep thinker, and I think that we need to just revisit a couple things very quickly to help the audience who may not have the level of awareness that that you have been able to touch. First, the profound nature of you choosing to fully participate, not just in your life, but in your illness experience. And for those who are connected with me, often come from aspects at times of this chronic illness or organ transplant community, and that you took a similar journey as I did, in that when we got a diagnosis, although it manifested differently for us, there was a very quick realization of my own mortality at a young age, and I didn't quite feel ready to accept that. That didn't feel like my destiny. But then also the realization that what the medical community had to offer me, and I was literally told, we can do nothing more for you. And at that point, I realized that I had to be an active participant, not only within my illness experience, but actually, as you said, instead of living life kind of walking forward, not knowing what was coming, when and why, whereas nothing made sense to me, to try to go within and, like you said, realize the things that had bothered me and to take that active role within not just my illness, but my life. And I remember so deeply for a moment here thinking about that time where I didn't have the realization like you, where I have a lot of trauma and I need to actively work on this. But what I realized was that I had a lot in my body that I know I didn't feel comfortable with. And I knew that I had anger and frustration, and I could feel somatically that I had things within me that if doctors couldn't offer me a solution, I had to figure a way to lighten the load of my body. And for me, the first thing I did was working on forgiveness of people who had hurt me, but then also I needed a deeper explanation for the hurt. And that's when I really started to realize this component of trauma and how that had an imprint on my body and on my mind. And, for those people out there, I didn't throw around these terms that much, that long, 10, 15 years ago, but I could feel it. I knew what it was, even though I didn't identify it as having CPTSD or PTSD. I recognized it within my body that something didn't feel good, and I had to find a way to shift that. So thank you for sharing that story. I think it's important for everybody to know that they can participate as fully as they want in their illness experience and in their life. And in fact, as you said, it brings a greater awareness of what relationships you're getting into, what you're manifesting, what you're trying to attempt to cultivate as your destiny. I loved, and I was wondering if you could speak a little bit more about how unconscious trauma, or trauma that's stuck somewhere in the psyche that you don't have the ability to have access to it, how that can manifest. Please just explain deeper how that looks in your life when you're unaware.
This is getting back to God or the goddess. When we are disconnected from the source of all that we are, and in terms of being female, we have a different experience because we give birth. So we are directly connected to the goddess energy, which is the deep feminine. Some call it the Black Madonna. Now, I have been very much inspired by a Jungian named Marion Woodman, who is no longer with us, but she truly was on the path. She had cancer twice. She was an anorexic when she was younger, and then she became a Jungian, and she wrote a book called Addicted to Perfection. And her whole message is about the disconnection of the deep feminine in ourselves and in our world. This disconnect. She says, this is a really great quote. She says that the Black Madonna, and this you will see in Christian images and Eastern images, the Black Madonna is the goddess, and she is the manifestation of God in matter. Matter means mother, right? The word matter is the mother. The problem about talking about the deep feminine is the fact that we as human beings, because we've lived in this technological age and what some feminists call the patriarchy, that whole energetic is not a bad thing. We wouldn't be having these conversations here. Everything in your environment you wouldn't have. There's a lot of very positive natural evolution of our species through the quote unquote patriarchy. So that's not what I'm talking about. And what Marion Woodman was talking about, she was talking about this deeper, more experiential experience of the depth of the feminine. We are supposed to get that with our own mothers when we are born. This is the closest we women, and I'm childless, that and I won't have, I can't have children. I lost that ability through my own shadow of misusing my sexuality and having abortions and a miscarriage. So I lost that ability. But the closest that a woman has to being enveloped by that energy is with a baby. You can observe it. It's a complete, the chemicals are being released from her. They're coming from God, something much greater. The mystery is giving you that pure essence of matter, of the mother, into the child. And it's a relationship, and it's deep love. And a woman, that is the closest that we get. And the man or any child is supposed to get that when they are born. They're disconnected, right? They're born usually in a hospital or, you know, in kind of a traumatic, it's just traumatic to be in the womb, and then you're out in this world all alone, naked, right? And so the mother is giving that pure safety. It's safety, embodiment, love through the relationship, right? And so many of us, men and women, are abandoned. And it's not because our mothers didn't do the best that they could. It's a reflection of our society, of culture, of kind of the way that we are. But now, if we don't start to touch and get back connected into that essence of this depth, it's an essence.
Mhm.
It's, you can feel it, sometimes you can feel it out in nature. I mean, it's very important if you can get outside every day, go for walks, whatever you need to do, but to connect to a deeper essence of the matter, of the mother, of the earth.
Mhm.
This gets you closer to it. But this is why it's so challenging for us, is if we don't reconnect to this depth of what I'm saying here, and I don't even know if I can explain it in a way that your audience is going to receive it, but I'm doing the best that I can.
Mm.
If we don't reconnect to this in ourselves and in our lives, then the shadow side comes in, and this is where illness, cancer, immune disorders, bad relationships, everything that's the opposite of the natural mother gets flipped.
Mhm.
And this is a gift. See, this is another way of looking at it. This is a gift from her too, because she will manifest herself. I'm getting a little mythological here, but she will manifest herself as the death mother.
Mhm. Mhm.
Kali, the dark face, chaos, that's the more aggressive version of that energy. Or the death mother, which is a sucking, a victimization kind of energy. And that will come in. Basically, she's saying, look at me and embody me, or I'm going to take you. I'm going to take you.
Mhm. Mhm.
It's very powerful and it's very intense.
Mhm.
But you can see a lot of times, the way Colin and I talk, we flip around, we call it hold-on jumping. So how you see yourself as an individual is also manifested out into our culture, into the collective unconscious of humanity. As above, so below. So what you're seeing in our culture is the inverted version of the feminine.
Mhm.
It's a flip side of the feminine.
Mhm.
To the point, so it started at like eating disorders, obesity, chemicals in the food, and then it became the over-sexualization of children, and now with the whole trans surgery,
Mhm.
where they have young women who are sacrificing their breasts and their body parts as teenagers because no one is coming in there to say to them, you are part of the great feminine. Every part of you is sacred. Your body is sacred. And it's been complete. So that's what happens when you don't honor the deep feminine that I'm talking about, your matter, your mother, and you don't get that from when you're a baby, then it becomes inverted. And that's where the dysfunction starts to happen. And so we're seeing this in our culture. it's become inverted
Mm-hmm.
to the point that now young women are having surgery to take off their breasts when they're 15, 16 years old, and being told that that their whole being, that what it was that they were born with is bad, just because you might be a tomboy. But the fact is that we all have these, the animus, the male part in a female, and in men, the female part. We're all made of this, but nobody is saying, wait a minute, what you are given is perfect from her.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why a young woman would start to go to this extreme is this inverted information that's coming through the shadow of the culture. You know, it started many years ago, and now with the internet, it's just at breakneck speed. So I don't know what, if I had grown up in this time, for all I know, I would have an OnlyFans account, or I would be, because I have those parts in myself, I'd be that, or I would feel that I'm so disconnected from my breasts and my body that I just didn't even want to be female. And all of this is just a complete disconnect from that depth. And that is because of trauma, just the trauma of not having your mother even be around, not having to work and support you, and not being able to be there 100%. That causes trauma. It doesn't have to be severe trauma. It can just be because you were put in childcare and your mom was working when you were 2, 3 years old, or like that. So that's basically, I see a lot of human beings now that have this code of the abandoned child, which I have. And we are the ones that have the opportunity to start to heal that. But it takes a lot of self-responsibility and self-work. And that's what Colin and I share with our Shadow Tech Alchemy, are some tools as far as things that we do and that have helped us in processing this deeper trauma.
Melissa, you mentioned so many fantastic things, and things that I ponder myself, and things that I totally agree with everything that you're saying. And it's unfortunate because when I was younger, and I don't know if maybe you feel this as well, is there was an attempt at innocence when I was younger, and growing up and realizing I'm not being seen as I need to be seen. I'm not being heard or valued or appreciated, and seeing the ways in which I use that aspects of the shadow feminine to feel loved and support and pretty, or whatever it was that I had done. But you slowly start to lose that aspect of the innocence. And then it can become very shadowy. And I was well aware, even though I didn't have this terminology in my younger days, when I was using something based off of an unmet need and when I wasn't. And it just seems to me today, as you mentioned, that because of time, is that the younger children are really losing their innocence so young, and that there's a lot of, they're just falling victim to these movements. And then what happens is we seem to, the current narratives institutionally and beyond, want to change laws, want to tear down history to support what I feel is really mainly the shadow side. And I wanted to know if you could talk a little bit more about the inversion of energies, and even if you wouldn't mind speaking, if you feel comfortable on speaking, how the feminine can invert in her energies and what that looks like in the world, and even coupled maybe with a masculine, and maybe sometimes what happens to the masculine as the woman inverts, and has how his energy also inverts.
Yeah, so there's different archetypal flows, and all of us have a certain recipe of these flows. So with the feminine, when she's younger, she has a natural, obviously it's a sexuality. It's a natural sexuality. It's like a flower blooming. And this is just a natural phenomenon. But how it's inverted is that she is supposed to get from her father a healthy relationship, and learn about boundaries, and learn about having a relationship with her father that is healthy and helps her stand in her feminine energy in an innocent, natural kind of way, with the boundaries, so that she's able to flirt with her, with boys and with her environment, but she's able to say no. And able to know that her body is sacred, and that she doesn't have to let all that powerful endorphins and sexual energy just go out physically and have sex with a bunch of boys or men. She doesn't have to do that. She can just hold that sexuality and honor it, and then naturally she will connect to a man to give her family and children, and it'll be a flow, and it's a very natural thing. Unfortunately, many of us didn't have fathers there, or we didn't have good relationships with our fathers. And when all this chemicals are going on, then we don't have boundaries, and our brain is still forming, and our bodies are still forming, we can be taken advantage of. But so that's that archetype. Now, in the really inverted way now, it's unfortunately, sexualization of children is the extreme version. Sexualization at a young, at having massive amounts of sex when you're a teenager, or then starting to be on Instagram and to sexualize yourself that way, to be popular, I mean, and then getting to the OnlyFans, it's, it's quite a situation that we found ourselves in. And that's that shadow, the Aphrodite shadow of Aphrodite. And then when she gets a little older, you can also use that energy in a manipulative way to manipulate men, disempower men. And unfortunately for men, they've been disempowered. And so that would be more of the Lilith or the dark, manipulative kind of feminine energy. Then you could look at a woman who uses her feminine energy to get power or to become like a man, like a Hillary Clinton or someone like that, where they become, that is very sociopathic, very narcissistic. That's in an extreme. Now, we can be tomboys. A lot of us girls are tomboys when, we're younger. We play with boys, we like sports, but then when you start to grow up and your hormones kick in, it gets really confusing. But with the inversion that's going on now, they're saying, and they're giving this to children in schools, that you might not even be the gender that you were born with. And that's absurd. You might have a very strong animus. You might be have such a strong animus that you're attracted to women, and you're a lesbian. That's fine. I'm not saying that that's not a bad thing. It's fine. But to get to the point where you're denying your natural feminine body, and then you start taking hormones given to you by an adult, and then have surgery and have your breast torn off when you're a teenager, that is a severe inversion.
Melissa, do you feel as though the experts in this case, or let's say the medical providers who are doing these sorts of operations, are fully aware of this sort of psychological information? Do you think that they know and they're complying? Do you feel that they don't know? Do you have anything to say about that?
I think some of it is completely unconscious, that they don't have enough self-awareness. They just get into the medical field and they go to these colleges where they're taught this gender ideology, and they just go along with the program. So some of it's completely being unconscious. Some of it is greed. Especially the plastic surgeons are making massive amounts of money off of this. Also, the whole medical system is making money because they will have a patient for life if they start to put a girl or a boy on hormones when they're a teenager. Then and then they start to do these surgeries, and there's all these side effects that happen. Then they have someone for life. It may be a short life, So that's a big, and this is a big problem with the medical industry. It shouldn't be an industry, number one.
Mhm.
It shouldn't be for profit, but
Mhm.
it is.
Mhm.
And if it was socialized, then you would have government control, and they obviously are never do things for people's well-being. So it's a major problem. Unfortunately, it's going to take people, and there's quite a few people out there right now who are exposing this,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
I think we're in a shift now.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, there's a lot of young people who have been very sociopathic, very narcissistic. That's in an extreme. Now, we can be tomboys. A lot of us girls are tomboys when, we're younger.
Mhm.
We play with boys, we like sports, but then when you start to grow up and your hormones kick in, it gets really confusing. But with the inversion that's going on now, they're saying, and they're giving this to children in schools, that you might not even be the gender that you were born with.
Mhm.
And that's absurd.
Mhm.
You might have a very strong animus. You might be have such a strong animus that you're attracted to women, and you're a lesbian. That's fine. I'm not saying that that's not a bad thing. It's fine. But to get to the point where you're denying your natural feminine body, and then you start taking hormones given to you by an adult, and then have surgery and have your breast torn off when you're a teenager, that is a severe inversion.
Melissa, do you feel as though the experts in this case, or let's say the medical providers who are doing these sorts of operations, are fully aware of this sort of psychological information? Do you think that they know and they're complying? Do you feel that they don't know? What do you have anything to say about that?
I think some of it is completely unconscious, that they don't have enough self-awareness. They just get into the medical field and they go to these colleges where they're taught this gender ideology, and they just go along with the program. So some of it's completely being unconscious. Some of it is greed. Especially the plastic surgeons are making massive amounts of money off of this. Also, the whole medical system is making money because they will have a patient for life if they start to put a girl or a boy on hormones when they're a teenager, then and then they start to do these surgeries, and there's all these side effects that happen, then they have someone for life, and maybe a short life. So that's a big, and this is a big problem with the medical industry. It shouldn't be an industry, number one. It shouldn't be for profit, but it is. And if it was socialized, then you would have government control, and they obviously are never never do things for people's well-being. So it's a major problem. Unfortunately, it's going to take people, and there's quite a few people out there right now who are exposing this, and I think we're in a shift now.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, there's a lot of young people who have been maybe not just physically affected, but psychologically and mentally affected. And I really can't say what's going to happen, but the more of us that have worked on healing our own trauma, our own lack of acceptance of our matter, right? Our mother. I know I had eating disorders. I am still working with my body after all these years. I just recently, I realized how much that I've been body armoring.
Can you explain that?
So Wilhelm Reich, he was in the 40s and 50s, and he was censored and from the government and died, I believe. I'm not sure if he died in jail, but he was working with people, and he had a theory, and please forgive me, I'm not a Reich expert, but he talked about our natural energy as this ozone energy, which I would relate to just chi, our life energy, right? Chi. And that most people are armoring their body. They're shutting off this natural life force, right? And when we don't accept our bodies, our matter, and the reason we don't accept it is because of what I was talking about at the beginning, about this abandonment from the mother, the deep safety, loving, protection, being enveloped by that pure unconditional love. That chemical is supposed to be in us throughout our whole lives. And so many of us are not, and then we don't feel comfortable in our bodies.
Right.
And we see out there, and then we're given all these cultural images. I'm supposed to look like that, or and then the inversion of that is this whole being fat and unhealthy is good. That's an inversion too, right? So that's not it. If you were really self-loving, you would want to move your body and not just be sit and comatose and be eating refined sugar and you know, you wouldn't want to be like that. So all of these are inverted because it's different ways of avoiding the full embodiment of the feminine. And so the body armoring is a way that and this will manifest physically, and it's been manifesting physically in me. And it manifests in immune disorder, disease, cancer, any kind of disorder. It's the body saying, the matter, the mother saying, if you don't see me, if you don't accept me, then I'm going to show you where I am, right?
Right.
I'm going to show you. So recently I've gotten, I'm all about, I do believe that we do not understand the body at all, that we're just beginning, the body and the mind. We're like ants. And I've been using my body as an experiment for 25 years now. And what I found at this point is that all pain is just blocked energy that it's telling us to look and process it. If you're doing the external of just basically not giving yourself poison and doing the day-to-day work of being a healthy person, then if we get pain or some sort of a diagnosis, that is purely the matter, the mother saying, look at me, what help, I want to connect with you. I want to show you what you're not looking at. And it's very difficult because any kind of pain, whether it's physical or emotional or spiritual, our natural biological tendency is to get away from pain, away from suffering. So the way that I've been dealing with physical pain or emotional pain is by allowing it to be and to do the opposite, which is to get away from it, take a pain pill or whatever it is to allow it to speak to me and relax into it and surrender and open up what it is. How it works through me, whether it's physical or emotional pain, is a process of surrender. So I'm surrendering to what is. And if it's pain at that particular moment, I surrender to the greater whole of my own body, of the greater mystery of life, of the mother or God. So I surrender to that, and then I allow it to release in whatever way that it wants to release. And usually that's very deep crying. It's a release. And then you will feel, or how I feel, if I'm doing this correctly, is I'm receiving. Then it's a deep, receptive receiving from the God, Goddess. And it's a healing. It's a natural healing cycle. It's for somebody who would just be starting out on this journey, the first thing that you can do is, when you have any kind of pain, whether it be emotional pain or physical pain, is to start asking questions. and try to somewhat step out of it and be the observer of the pain instead of having it completely take you over, right? So it's an awareness, and you're kind of slightly out a little bit. And you ask yourself, what does this mean? Where are you coming from? You start to have a more active relationship with your own body. Most people are so disconnected with their bodies, they think that this flesh, they're trying constantly to get out of the flesh.
And that can come from the extreme of the material aspect of it, or the extreme of the spiritual aspect of it. It seems like we're always trying to run away from the matter. And I've done the same thing that you're describing. I perceive it a little different when I'm working on my own trauma healing and my own past and integrating my history. It's almost like reparenting. So when I have the pain now, or a discomfort, or I feel a cold coming on, or whatever it may be, I really sit with myself, like you said, the observer, or almost like the mother. And I ask myself, okay, you're safe. What's going on? Do you want to rest? Do you want to this? Like you said, I immediately open up this dialogue with myself that takes me out of the pain, but lets me look at it and be there for it, for whatever wants to come up. And because of the way we've been so conditioned through primarily the medical field that we have here, is that whenever there's a pain or a discomfort, go to the doctor, get it checked, and you probably will be reaffirmed that something's wrong with you.
Exactly.
So for me, I've had to really learn how to cultivate the level, again, of trust, that there is something beyond my own mentality that kind of understands the holistic nature of myself as a human being. So really cultivating, when I feel discomfort, before running anywhere, to trust that my body is doing something, to trust myself in sitting with it. And obviously, if it's an emergency, I know what to do. But 99% of the time, I've discovered it's not. And just my body needs a form of attention that I haven't been giving it. And I have to recenter myself.
Yeah, unfortunately, we've been told by the system that the medicine, that the doctor, that the hospital is the healer. But unfortunately, and you can see by statistics that there's a high percentage of people who actually, once they go to the hospital, they die. So people should, it's very hard when you're projecting a child. Most of us, I would say myself included, we're all children in adult bodies, and especially most of us have this abandonment issue. We haven't been given this full embodiment of safety and protection, and from the matter, from the mother. So we're projecting out there this healer onto a whole system that's become inverted.
Right.
And so it's unfortunate, but it's only people that have had these medical or physical crises, and they make that choice, right? They make the choice in that moment that, wait a minute, I'm responsible for my health, right? And then you can start to separate yourself from the inverted projection out there and realize that God, that the greater being that you were born with and that is now, has the information deep within the cells, within your own structure, to heal yourself.
Scientism tells us the exact opposite, and
Exactly.
that's another issue. It's so ironic and odd how the science community often denies God within the industry until somebody's dying and they'll bring in the priest. And then all of a sudden it's this big act that now we believe in God because of what I hope as we continue to proceed. And I think it's individuals like yourself and individuals, for instance, the experience I've been through who've had this profound experience with our own health. And we've chosen a different way to help to share our experiences of actually truly how powerful we are. Not saying that we don't need surgery ever, or that sometimes aspects of surgery or whatever aren't necessary, but I'd say probably a high percentage of times it's not and can be avoided. I in fact just saw a study that was released saying and encouraging the healthcare field to start offering children drugs and surgery for obesity, because we know now children are so obese. And, I hope and pray that as more people continue to talk and more aspects of people within the community tend to speak out, that we can at least bring some information. And sometimes I feel that maybe it's just, like you said, an unconsciousness or you don't know what you don't know type of thing. And I think the more we bring this information from the people who have had the direct experience and can share truly, this is what happened to me, without being judged, criticized, or canceled. So there's just this cognitive dissonance within what they're seeing and what they're willing to believe.
One thing back to what you were saying about scientism is the problem with atheists and scientism is that the science itself becomes their God.
Right.
Is that the human being has always been mythological, it's in our DNA. And by just saying no to God, you're going to find your God somewhere else, whether it's in a superhero, somebody, something you project out there, whether it's an ideology. You can really see it in this whole wokeism or all this stuff in academia. It all becomes ritualized. And if you realize that, then the better thing to do is once again turn the mirror around and ask yourself, who am I?
Yeah.
Who am I? What do these cells, what is this body for? Why am I here? Start to ask questions instead of following some ideology out there. Find out what you are in there. And as far as the whole medical, it's a complex, just like the military-industrial complex. Well, it's a medical industrial complex out there, and it's filled with viruses, filled with mental viruses that are parasitic, and they're feeding off a willing victim and they don't care about you. I mean, obviously there's doctors that do care. I'm not saying all doctors are like that, but I'm saying the complex, the medical industrial complex does not care about you, just like the military industrial complex doesn't care about you and just wants to feed itself. That's what the medical system has become. So there are a lot of alternative, smaller, different ways of dealing with your health. And they're starting to sprout everywhere. I saw one through Joe Rogan. I forget what it was called. But there are some alternatives now. And anyone that is in that system, I would recommend start looking around to alternatives, because that's the next step. What I've been doing is more of an extreme sport version. Not everyone has that desire to go on that kind of a journey. But even starting to open up one's mind to alternatives, and then with a strength in your own being, in your own body, mind, of self-responsibility, that can definitely help you on your way.
I mean, I think one thing that is so incredibly obvious is that we have a tremendous mental health issue here in America. And it's so obvious. And I believe most people would agree and are starting to realize the implications of mental health and physical health. And if you're not at least looking at the correlation of those two, yet alone a mental, emotional, energetic correspondence of these, you're going to be outdated real quick. People, I think, are starting to wake up that we have many layers and that they all affect each other.
There are people that are talking about this correlation between the physical and the mental and trauma. Gabor Mate,
Excellent.
he's been on point with this. He has programs, more of the psycho-spiritual. A mentor of Colin and I, C. Michael Smith, who's a Jungian and also a real shaman, has a program for people who are more on the spiritual path of healing. So those are two people that I really recommend looking at. And for women, you can go onto YouTube and look up Marion Woodman, and she was phenomenal at understanding this deeper feminine, how to engage it in the body, how to start more awareness. So I recommend her work. As far as creativity, so every human being is a creative soul, right? We're all creative. And because, again, of the way that the culture is, it says that you're either you're a creative or you're just a worker person, but that's not the case. As far, number one thing that a person can do to start to connect with the natural creative nature of their own being is start to journal. Just start to journal, start to write every day. You don't have to think about what you're going to write, just start writing. Also, if you don't have anything to write about, and this is really important, your dreams, start looking at your own dream life. Start asking yourself before you go to bed, I want to remember my dreams. And then first thing in the morning, write down your dreams and then write how it feels or what that dream felt like to you. These are very, very easy things that you can do and doesn't take any energy at all. Now, if you always like to draw as a child, draw a picture. But the reason why we don't do these things, or like some people are more physical and they might just want to go outside and just move your body around, right? This is all getting in touch with matter, with the mother, with our bodies, and to know thyself, right? Yourself is your divine nature. And so it's very easy. But what I found when I tell people to do these things is they always make excuses. I'm too busy, or I don't remember my dreams, or, you know, I don't have time, or
I don't have talent. I don't have this. I don't have that. Right.
yeah, and those are just these little parts of ourselves that are afraid. But in order to, sometimes you have to take the warrior archetypal mode. This is the part of you that says, I am going to take responsibility for my life and my health and my well-being. That same energy, you can say, I am going to write my dreams down. I am going to go and take that dance class and follow through on going and taking that dance class. I am going to take piano lessons, or I am going to go onto YouTube and do a piano educational video, or I am going to, you know, whatever it is, you have to push against these natural tendencies to make excuses.
Right.
So it's, you just have to push. It's like a balancing act. Every time that you want to move forward, these damaged, traumatized parts of ourselves are afraid, and they don't want to go along for the ride. So they're going to push back. They do things, they're so active, these complexes, or these little parts that are traumatized and just want, you know, to be safe and tucked in. They become extremely active when you start to move forward towards health in your life. You may get a physical pain, like say you made a decision to go to that dance class, and you even paid for it, and then you get some sort of old pain issue, right? I have a friend who's this incredible drummer, and he also has these complexes, and he's like a rock star guy. I mean, he is a total rock star. And he just got this audition to play for a very famous thrash metal band. And he got a bladder infection and had to go to a hospital. He's still doing the audition, but that's a perfect example of what happens when you start to take action out there to go towards life, right? You want to go towards your biggest self, your destiny. We're given this fate, this trauma, some of it's epigenetic, some of it's come through our own life. So that's our fate. Michael Meade, he's great. Recommend his work, but he talks about this fate and this destiny, right? We're going towards our destiny in life. Our destiny is the manifestation in matter of our big S self, of who we are, right? In the full encompassing of it. And so when this is a hero's journey, and anybody who has had a crisis, a medical crisis, I would call it a healing crisis, is on that journey. They gave themselves, or the great God, Mother, Father gave them this to go on the hero's journey. And so this is what happens. So you have to understand that even little action can have a reaction, because those little parts want to stay where they're at. But if you just look at these little parts, and just talk to them, if you want to take that dance lesson, but you got sick, you got the pain, I would not skip it. I would go anyway to that dance class and move through it. A medical emergency, you have the opportunity in that medical emergency to say, okay, why did this happen now? I was about to go to my first dance class because I really, really love dancing ever since I was a child. And I want to go to that dance class, but I had this medical emergency. Why did this happen? And just develop this warrior energy to push through these challenges. You will keep growing towards your biggest self.
And ask questions, like you said, is so impactful and empowering, and develop that relationship with yourself, like you're actually here to nurture yourself. That's been so helpful for me. Wounds that pop up from the past, right? Like, oh, I have this right hip that bothers me every now and again. And it manifesting in different times in life, like over and over again, would you say is related to some sort of trauma like we're discussing?
Yeah, Colin, my partner, is really good at explaining John Sarno's work on TMS, which is basically, he was a back doctor and found that people would come to him saying that they had these back problems and there was nothing wrong with their backs. And it was very rare that the people actually did have real back problems. So he figured out, his theory was it was repressed rage. But I think it's probably more than just that. And generally, also the theory is that wherever you've had some sort of an injury or recurring kind of issue is where the psychosomatic energy goes, right? It's usually, for me, it's in my female organs, right? Because I misused them. And then I got cancer. And then I had this fibroid that was about this big. And I finally, in my 40s, I got the fibroid taken out, right? And then I was not allowed to have children after that. So everybody has like weak areas, right? And generally, this is where that energy will go in their body. So that is something to be aware of. And also John Sarno said that a very small percentage will actually take that to heart. I believe he said only 20%. I think it's 20%. I'm not absolutely positive, but it was a small percentage who would actually take the diagnosis of this, I'm self-creating. But the more that I've been working with it, it makes me understand more of the mystery that we don't understand the way that our cells in our bodies are working with us. And it's something to be very aware of. Whether or not you will be able to take that, you can only test on yourself. One of the exercises that John Sarno talks about is make a list of everything that's causing you any kind of stress in your life, whether that's and it can be a little thing like my house is really, really messy and I need to clean the garage. That could be on the list. It can be, but just write down everything that you need to do that you haven't done that's causing you stress.
Mhm.
And then take that list and start taking off things on that list.
That's
And
great.
then watch your body and the issue. Say you have tendinitis and you have a weakness in your wrist, and just watch it.
Yeah.
And Colin did this initially, and he had this shoulder pain and he started to do this exercise, and then it went away.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So it's really up to the individual to do these things, but I would definitely look at that. And any of the books by John Sarno, I would recommend.
We'll leave our audience a list of the people that you mentioned and some of the resources. Melissa, this has been so informative, and you're a beautiful expression of the potential of what feminine energy can actually do when we allow that to be in touch with our life. And I'd love to potentially have you back to talk more about the feminine energy at some point. But would you like to mention any other projects that you're currently working on, or how people can find you?
Yeah, so obviously the work that I've been doing with Colin E. Davis, shadowtechalchemy.com. That's all the work on the shadow and these healing practices that we've been doing. And then we have a book that came out about 5 years ago called Shadow Tech, and you can download it free from our website, shadowtechalchemy.com. Also, every 2 weeks, we have free Zoom calls where you're welcome to come on in, and we just discuss these topics about the shadow and how to do this shadow work. And anyone is welcome, and you don't have to show yourself. You can just listen, and it's really a community to help people start to move into self-responsibility and taking responsibility for their health and their healing and their wellness, and moving into your destiny. As far as my music and art, I'm a lifelong musician, songwriter, and I have a project right now called Deprogram Matrix, which we call red pill culture hacking metal, but it's becoming more of a personal kind of project where some of these deeper concepts and cultural concepts I put into music and songwriting and performance art. And it's on the more industrial metal. That's why I look like this goth chick person, is just I'm an arty performer. And when I'm performing, it's a totally different experience. It's the right brain. And I'm quite very dramatic and theatrical in my presentation. But I'm on Twitter a lot these days because now it's more open. I've been censored quite a bit online because of what I talk about. And so now, because of Elon Musk, I'm back on Twitter, and that's probably where you can find more updates on what I'm doing. I'm about to record a little, I'm calling them audio memes, kind of like for old people. There used to be on Saturday morning television when we were kids, it was called Schoolhouse Rock. And it was like it was like entertainment and also like information that you would learn. And so I'm starting to do these little audio memes to kind of like put right brain information, all this information into right brain in very short little videos. So
Awesome.
that's what I'm working on now.
And is that on Twitter?
Yeah.
Okay,
That'll,
cool.
yeah, I'm about to do a brand new one. We're gonna film it this week, and then I'll put it up there. Yeah.
Great.
Facebook, I totally am on censored on Facebook. My main Melissa Mari page was taken down around a year and a half ago through all the COVID nonsense. So and Instagram, I'm censored a lot too. So Twitter is the only mainstream social media platform that I feel right now is more open.
Okay, great. We'll list all your information down below. Melissa, thank you so much for joining me today. Any final words?
Thank you. Just whoever's listening to this, just stay on the path. Have faith in yourself, your big S self, your own personal mission and destiny in life, and don't let anyone out there keep you from it, and know that you are incredibly loved. I mean, really loved.